What's going on, guys? Brent031. Appreciate you guys tuning in. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the most commonly used man-portable rocket launchers that were used by both the U.S. and its allies and the North Vietnamese and Vietcong during the Vietnam War. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment. Alright, so the first weapon system we're talking about is the 3.5-inch M20A1B1 Super Bazooka. And these things are incredibly badass, guys. These things were first designed towards the end of World War II. Obviously, the bazookas we were using in World War II initially were successful, but towards the end of the war, as German armor progressed, they weren't cutting the mustard. So a need for a larger caliber bazooka was in order. These things were extensively used in the Korean War to good effect against Soviet-built T-34 tanks. And as you can see, they fold up conveniently and very, very man-portable. And these things are only weighing about 13 pounds or so unloaded. And an individual infantryman can either carry this completely assembled or in the manner that I have it right now. Alright guys, so to assemble this, now I want to point out that this is a decommissioned M20A1B1, so what you're going to see is a big diameter size hole in the side of the Super Bazooka, as well as a steel rod welded into the back of the breech to prevent any loading of a rocket. So if you can get past those cosmetic issues there. So in any event, what we're going to do is we're going to assemble this now. So if you look on the side, right now it's in the carrying configuration. So you have the front of the bazooka is actually attached to the rear of the bazooka. So there's a lever right here. You're simply going to depress that lever, and that will allow you to pull this end out and then forward. Okay? Now I'm going to rotate this. Now I want to point out on the front here it says top. So that's going to help us orient this in the right direction. Alright, so then you go up here, you're going to rotate this lever up. I'm going to insert the lugs into the slots there, and then I'm going to rotate, and then rotate the lever down. Now our bazooka is fully assembled. As you can see, it says top right there. There we go. She is ready for action. Alright, so here's the optical sight. So as you can see, it's folded back for carrying purposes and non-use. But if you're going to put this weapon into action and you need to use the sight, you rotate it out, and then it also has a cover that protects the lens. So you rotate that up, and then you can look through the sight. Through the sight, it has a reticle in there that's graduated from 100 all the way to 400 yards. And then you guys can see this lever here. You can depress that lever and move this sight, and that will give you another 500 to 900 yards. Obviously at that point, when you're looking through this, these rounds are going to, you're essentially shooting these things at an arc. That round is going to hit max ordinate and then come back down. So just like the trajectory of a bullet, that's the purpose behind that. Alright guys, so here's the trigger housing. So you have wood grips on the pistol grip. It has a trigger guard. It also has a sling swivel attached to the bottom. So here's your safety selector. The down position is safe. Rotated up is fire. And then obviously this is your trigger. When you depress your trigger, it's going to send an electrical charge back into the rocket. Alright, so here's a 3.5-inch bazooka round. This is a training round, obviously with the blue. This was a training round. I just painted over it to make it look like a live round. But typically your live rounds would have looked something like this. Probably would have had a yellow band going around the top. But these things were capable of penetrating up to 11 inches of armor, so quite a bit of armor. Typically how these were carried, they were carried on a pack board such as this. And you just see these things strapped down to the outside, whether they be just the rocket or inside the original cardboard tubes that they came in inside these crates. Alright, loading this rocket. So this is the rear of the bazooka here. Now you would take your 3.5-inch bazooka round and you would load this from the rear, pushing forward, and you'd push this forward all the way in until it seats and can no longer push forward anymore. Notice that this lever is forward. Once this rocket is into the launcher, you'd rotate this lever up and into position. Typically what you would have is your A gunner would load the rocket for you, so you would be the gunner sighting in on target. A gunner loads the rocket, rotates this lever in once the rocket's in, checks the back blast area. Once the back blast area is all secure, he would indicate to the gunner that everything is good to go by slapping his helmet on the top, and that would let the gunner know that he was ready to rock and roll. Unfortunately, I can't load this rocket for you guys because of that welded rod in there as part of the deactivation process on this bazooka. Alright guys, to break this bazooka down, I'm simply going to rotate this lever, allowing me to detach this and find these connecting ends. Put the back in first, rotate this lever down, push it in, align it up, and then rotate the lever back down into position. There you go. It's back into a carrying position. Man portable. Alright guys, so the next launcher we're going to talk about is probably one of the most iconic from the Vietnam War, and that is the M72 light anti-tank weapon, aka the Law. Fires a 66mm warhead. Here's an example of a rocket right here. It has these fins in the back, so once fired, these fins would deploy and help stabilize it in flight. But this rocket would be contained inside the launcher itself, just like so. And then these were considered one-time use disposable rockets. So essentially you fire that and then you're done. You wouldn't reload it like you would an M20 bazooka or the RPGs that we're going to talk about later. But guys learned real quick from what I've read and researched that you would not dispose these on the ground, because the Vietcong would come along, they pick up these discarded tubes, they load them up with grenades, and then they convert them into booby traps. But moving forward, so this is the early version of the M72, which would later be replaced by a variant like this, the M72A1 or an A2 variant. But this is the one that was probably most associated with the Vietnam War. So you look at this, to deploy this, it has a pin in the back, so you'd pull this pin. Once you do that, pull the cover off. Now notice when this front cover popped off, this front sight deployed. Then you bring your hand over the back and just simply pull back. Deploys the rear sight, you pull this back till it locks into place. And then, to fire this, in case you forget, there's instructions on the back, but to fire this, you have to arm it. So you'd arm it by pulling this forward, and you'd also have to pull this safety pin out here in the rear. But once that's done, you simply put this on your shoulder, just using your rear sight, you'd aim in with your front sight, and then you depress this to fire the rocket. This is your actual trigger. Here's a later variant of the Law. It's got a lot of similarities, but it mainly upgrade. There were some issues with the original M72s. The conditions in Vietnam were not suitable for this rocket, so you did have some reports of misfires and early detonations of the rocket. Deploy this rocket very similar to the original M72. You're going to pull the pin to the rear. Once you pull this back cap out, it's going to take off the front cap. And at that point, you're going to grab onto the rear and pull back until it locks into place. You see that the rear side deployed and the front side popped up. So one big design difference here is that the front side is not contained in the front underneath the front cap like it is in the original M72. Once this is deployed, all you simply got to do to arm it is pull this forward. All right, and then it is ready to rock and roll. To fire this rocket, you simply aim in using your rear sight and front sight aperture and depress the trigger here. So here are some comparative differences between the M72 and the M72A1 and A2. Look at the trigger design here. One thing to note is that the end cap here in the back, you can use this as a shoulder stop. The original M72 does not have that. You can also see this like pulley system here on the M72, whereas you actually have a like a metal bar on the later variant. So arming and trigger mechanism. That is the rear sight on the M72. Here's the rear sight on the M72A2, which hasn't changed very much. The big change is going to be with the front sight. So this is a M72A2 front sight. And this is a M72 front sight. As you can see, the sights on the M72 A1 and A2 are definitely an upgrade from the original M72 Law. All right, so we spent some time talking about what the U.S., ARVN, and other allies carried in terms of lightweight portable infantry rocket launchers during the Vietnam War. Now let's look at what the North Vietnamese Army and Vietcong generally carried. One of the most prolific ones was the Soviet-built RPG-2, better known to the Vietnamese as the B-40. This is a 40mm launcher and reusable, unlike the M72. So generally what you're speaking of when you're talking about the RPG-2 or B-40 launcher is the PG-2 rocket. As you can see, it has a cap here down at the end where it screws on and will accept the booster. Now this is an RPG-7 dummy booster. The PG-2 booster was essentially the same thing, just a little bit shorter. But that would screw into the bottom of the rocket. Once the booster is screwed on, you can insert the rocket into the launcher. And what you're trying to do here is line up this indentation into the slot. You're going to push it down all the way until it's flush. What that means is that the primer is lined up perfectly with the firing pin. The sights on the B-40 are flip-up sights. And as you can see, it's graduated from 50 all the way to 150 meters. To cock this weapon, you're going to simply take your thumb and cock the hammer back until it locks into place. It's a single action trigger. To engage the safety, you're going to push from left to right, places the weapon on safe so the hammer will not fall. To disengage the safety, you're going to push from right to left, and then you can disengage the trigger. The hammer will fall, striking the primer, which will ignite the rocket and set it downrange. For carrying PG-2 rockets, gunners and assistant gunners would carry something like this, which would be a man pack that would carry 2 to 3 PG-2 grenades inside it, along with boosters and associated cleaning equipment. Alright, so last but not least, probably one of the most prolific launchers in human history. I mean, ever since this thing was introduced by the Soviets, this thing has probably been in damn near every conflict since. And that is the RPG-7. Now the RPG-7, again, is a 40mm tube. This particular variant here has a bipod. I have not seen any actual pictures of NVA RPGs with bipods on them. However, I do have a book about the NVA that features a cartoon illustration of a NVA soldier carrying an RPG-7 with a bipod. So I don't know, if you guys have a picture of an NVA with a bipod, I'd like to see it personally. But nonetheless, it can have a bipod or not. It also has a PGO-7 Optical Sight. It's a 2.7 power sight for the launcher. You can either see them with or without those. They either have them or they don't. It's detachable sight. You can either use the sight or you can use these flip-up iron sights. So either or sighting system. Function is essentially the exact same as the B-40. The trigger mechanism is the exact same. So single action trigger, cock it with your thumb. Safety manipulation is the same. Left to right is safe, right to left is fire. Pull the trigger, hammer will fall, strikes the primer, ignites the rocket, and fires it. The most common rocket for the RPG-7, although this weapon is capable of firing a multitude of different rockets, but the most prolific one is probably going to be the PG-7 rocket. So here is an example. When the rocket fires out of the tube, it deploys, just like on the Law, deploys these fins to help stabilize the rocket and put it in a spin, which helps to give it accuracy. On these rockets, unlike the rockets of the Allied forces, they do have a safety cap. The safety cap has to be removed in order for the rocket to detonate upon impact. One thing to note is that if if guys remove the safety cap and they're running and they trip or something, and this RPG goes nose first into the ground, it could ignite the rocket and detonate it, and it's going to be a very, very bad day for that gunner. So just a heads up there. So loading the RPG-7. So a gunner or a gunner would carry a rocket bag similar to this, which would carry 2 to 3 grenades in it. Then you pull out your grenade, which would have on the bottom a Bakelite cap, which you would unscrew. And then this bag would also carry the necessary boosters. You take your booster out, the boosters would come in a wax cardboard container, and then you simply screw your booster on. Once this is screwed on, you're simply going to insert this inside the launcher. And as you insert this, you're going to insert this notch into this indentation and push it in until it's flush. And what that does is it's going to line up the primer with the firing pin. So the PG-07 sight has a rubber lens cover that protects it. You also have a forehead piece to help assist with getting the proper eye relief on your optic. Well, that's it, guys. That concludes this video over some of the most commonly used man-portable rocket launchers during the Vietnam War. If you're liking what you're seeing, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. There's definitely going to be more to come. One last thing I want to do is I want to dedicate this video to a good friend of mine. His name is Tom Rosbo. He was a sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. He was an infantryman in Vietnam, and he passed away recently. Semper Fidelis, brother, and you will always be remembered. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to leave a comment.